What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars decides to rewrite the script of a morning show interview? What you're about to see is a moment that left everyone, from the hosts to the viewers, absolutely stunned. Kevin Costner, known for his unapologetic honesty, clashed with Michael Strahan on Good Morning America, and the results were nothing short of explosive. What started as a light-hearted segment promoting Costner's new Western series quickly turned into an unforgettable confrontation. The tension between Costner and Strahan mounted, leaving the studio in shock as Costner delivered a verbal shutdown so powerful, Strahan was left speechless. Before we dive into this intense exchange, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What do you think about celebrities who push back against the system? Are they brave or just looking for drama? Let's break it down. Good morning. America was buzzing with its usual energy. Michael Strahan flashed his trademark smile as the crew prepped for the live broadcast. Kevin Costner, there to promote his latest project, a Western series, was ready for what seemed like another run-of-the-mill interview. But from the moment Strahan greeted him, the atmosphere shifted. "Kevin, welcome back to Good Morning America. It's always great to have you here," Strahan said, his voice upbeat. Costner nodded casually. "Thanks, Michael. It's good to be back." Strahan dove right into the questions. "You're diving back into the Western genre. People are excited, but some critics say it feels like you're retreading old ground. What's your response to that?" Costner's expression subtly shifted, his calm demeanor revealing an underlying tension. He leaned forward slightly. "Retreading old ground, huh? That's one way to put it," Strahan continued, seemingly oblivious to the change in tone. "You've done Dances with Wolves, Open Range, and Yellowstone. Some wonder if it's just more of the same." The studio quieted as Costner's tone grew more direct. "Michael, let me ask you something. When you played football, did you only throw the same pass every time? Or did you adjust based on the defense?" Strahan laughed, trying to brush it off. "Well, I played defense, not quarterback. But I get what you're saying. Do you?" Costner's voice was steady, but his words carried weight. "Because what you're implying is that telling stories about the American West is somehow limiting. These stories aren't just retreads. They're about struggle, survival, sacrifice, and reducing them to that? You're missing the point." The tension was now palpable. Strahan, clearly caught off guard, tried to steer the conversation back to safer waters. "I didn't mean to suggest your work isn't important. I'm just asking what some people are asking." Costner didn't blink. "Some people? Or the producers who wrote that question on your cards?" Strahan, now flustered, laughed awkwardly. "Come on, Kevin, we're just having a conversation." "Are we?" Costner shot back, his tone sharp. "Or are you more interested in creating a viral moment than understanding the work behind it?" The gloves were off, and it was clear this wouldn't be an ordinary interview. What would happen next? As the interview continued, it became clear that the usual friendly banter wasn't going to cut it. Michael Strahan, the ever-charismatic host, was now on the back foot. The easy back and forth that the producers had envisioned had turned into a charged standoff, and the studio could feel it. Every word from Kevin Costner now carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. Strahan, sensing that the conversation had veered off course, tried to regain his footing. "Kevin, I'm just trying to ask the tough questions that people want answers to," he said, his voice slightly defensive. But Costner wasn't having it. His calm demeanor barely masked the intensity in his eyes. "Tough questions? No, Michael, these aren't tough questions. They're lazy questions. Questions designed for clicks, for headlines, not for real conversation." He leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving Strahan. "You want to ask tough questions? Try asking something that digs deeper, something that shows you care about what we're doing, not just how you can spin it." The studio was silent now. The energy had shifted completely. Strahan's usual easygoing confidence was now replaced with the unmistakable feeling of discomfort. "I'm just doing my job, Kevin. I'm asking what people want to know." "People?" Costner repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Or producers who want the quick soundbite. Because I'm not here to feed that machine. I'm here to talk about real work, real stories. And if you're not prepared for that, then maybe this interview wasn't meant to happen at all." Strahan looked taken aback. This wasn't the celebrity he was used to. He had interviewed A-listers before, but none had come at him like this. "Look, I respect your work, Kevin. I'm just trying to have a conversation here." "Respect? Is that what you call this?" Costner shot back, not missing a beat. "Because it doesn't feel like respect. It feels like you're trying to provoke me into some viral moment. You've done your homework, right? Or are you just winging it?" The tension was now unbearable. The co-hosts on the side exchanged uncomfortable glances, and the crew behind the cameras could be seen hesitating, unsure if they should cut away or let the moment continue. The interview had become a live spectacle, a drama unfolding in real time. Strahan, trying to salvage the situation, took a deep breath. "Kevin, I don't think this is about me. I'm here to get the story out. We're just talking." "No, Michael," Costner replied firmly. "It's exactly about you. You've got to understand something. If you're not prepared, if you're just asking surface-level questions, you're not respecting the person you're interviewing. You're not respecting the work they've put in." The real story wasn't about Costner's new show anymore. It was about the clash between entertainment and substance. Would Strahan be able to recover? At this point, Michael Strahan was clearly out of his depth. What was supposed to be a smooth, promotional interview had quickly turned into a tense battle of wills. Costner wasn't backing down, and Strahan was starting to realize that he was losing control of the conversation. The studio atmosphere had shifted from lively to uncomfortable. Strahan, now visibly flustered, attempted to recalibrate. "Look, Kevin," he started, his voice a little more defensive. "I get it. I really do. But we're live here. We have to keep the show moving. This is what people expect." Costner didn't flinch. "People expect what, Michael? A watered-down version of the truth. A conversation that doesn't challenge anyone. You're asking me to give you sound bites so you can get your ratings, and I'm telling you, that's not how it works." The words hung in the air. The crew in the control room was on edge, unsure if they should intervene or let the interview play out. This wasn't just another segment. This was real tension, unfolding on live television. Strahan, trying to regain some control, leaned forward with a forced smile. "Come on, Kevin, this isn't about ratings. It's about the fans, the viewers who want to hear from you. I'm asking questions that people want to know. You're just taking it the wrong way." Costner shook his head, his eyes never leaving Strahan's. "I'm not taking anything the wrong way, Michael. I'm telling you that if you want to ask real questions, you need to understand the work, understand the story. It's not about making me look defensive for the sake of a headline. It's about diving into something deeper, something meaningful." Strahan's face faltered for a moment. He had prided himself on being able to handle any interview, but this was different. Costner wasn't playing the game the way he was used to. This wasn't about celebrity pleasantries. It was about substance, about real conversation. Costner pressed on. "You've been in this business long enough, Michael. You should know the difference between asking a question for the audience's benefit and asking a question for your own benefit. Don't mistake the two." The studio audience sat in stunned silence. They had been expecting a casual interview, but what they were witnessing was much more profound. Strahan, clearly flustered now, stumbled for words. "Kevin, I just thought this would be an easier conversation." Costner's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "Sometimes the hard conversations are the ones that matter the most. And that's what this show should be about. Real conversation, not just headlines." The conversation had taken a sharp turn, and it was clear. Costner wasn't playing by the rules. What would happen next? As the tension in the studio thickened, it was clear that Strahan's usual charm and professionalism were no match for the unyielding honesty of Kevin Costner. Strahan, visibly struggling, tried once more to steer the interview back to the surface-level questions, hoping to get back on track. "Look, Kevin, we're not here to make you uncomfortable," Strahan said, his voice calmer now but still defensive. "We're just trying to have an honest conversation. People want to know more about your new series, not just about what you think of these interviews." Costner leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but piercing. "People want honesty, Michael, not fluff. If they wanted fluff, they wouldn't be watching a show like this. They'd be watching one of the countless morning talk shows where everyone just pretends everything's fine. But that's not what we're doing here, is it? Strahan opened his mouth to respond, but Costner wasn't done. This is about art, Michael. It's about stories that matter. And if you don't understand that, then what are we even talking about here? He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I'm not just here to promote a series. I'm here to tell you why it's important, why it matters. And if you're not ready to listen, then maybe we should wrap this up. The entire studio was silent now. Strahan, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to gather himself. I get it, Kevin, I really do. I just didn't think we'd go down this road. I thought it would be easier, you know? Easy never got anyone anywhere meaningful, Costner shot back. His voice was quiet but firm, each word landing with precision. The easy route is what you're asking for. A quick interview that leaves everyone happy but doesn't make anyone think. And that's not what this work is about. The work I'm doing now. It's about challenging people to think, to reflect. If you're not willing to engage in that, what's the point? Strahan was momentarily speechless, his earlier defensive tone replaced with a quieter sense of realization. I see what you're saying, he admitted, his voice softer now. I didn't expect this. But you're right, Kevin. We should be talking about the real questions. Costner nodded slowly, the tension easing ever so slightly. I'm glad you understand. It's not about me, Michael. It's about the bigger picture. We can have a superficial conversation, or we can have a real one. I'm choosing the real one, and I hope you do too. The studio had shifted. The energy was still tense, but now there was a sense of respect in the air. Strahan, having been pushed to his limits, seemed to realize that this interview wasn't just another promotion. It was a chance to go deeper. With Strahan finally seeing the depth of the conversation, the question now became, would they continue to explore the real issues, or was it too late? The studio remained tense, but now the atmosphere had shifted. Kevin Costner's unyielding stance had forced Michael Strahan to reassess not just the interview, but the very nature of his job. What was supposed to be a simple promotional segment had transformed into an exchange that would leave both men, and everyone watching, questioning the boundaries of celebrity interviews. Strahan, now aware that his usual approach wasn't going to work, took a deep breath and shifted gears. Okay, Kevin, he said, his voice more measured. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this series of yours. I think that's what we're really here for, right? What makes this one different from everything you've done before? Costner's expression softened just slightly, but his focus remained sharp. The series is different because it's real. It's not just about characters fighting for some grand cause or heroic ideals. It's about people, real people, trapped by the circumstances of their time, divided by ideologies. It's not just black and white. It's complicated, messy, and human. Strahan nodded slowly, finally leaning in as if he understood what Costner was getting at. So you're saying it's not just a typical war story? No, Costner replied firmly. It's not. It's a story about two brothers torn apart by the Civil War. One fighting for freedom, the other fighting to protect what he knows. But here's the kicker. Neither of them is entirely right, and neither of them is entirely wrong. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it real. Strahan, now fully engaged, asked, but how do you show that kind of complexity without alienating the audience? Without making it feel like you're trying to avoid taking sides? Costner leaned forward, his eyes intense. The key is empathy. You don't try to judge the characters. You show their humanity. You show their doubts. These are brothers. They love each other, and yet they're willing to kill each other because of what they believe. The war doesn't make them bad people. It makes them people who are struggling with an impossible choice. The weight of Costner's words hung in the air. Strahan, now deeply focused, asked, that sounds like a real challenge, not just for the characters but for the audience too. To get them to see both sides, to empathize with both. That's the challenge, Costner agreed. In today's world, it's easy to just pick a side. We've all done it. But I want people to understand that the truth isn't always simple. People are complicated, and the choices they make are often shaped by their circumstances. If you can show that, then maybe, just maybe, you'll start a conversation that matters." Strahan was quiet for a moment, processing the depth of what Costner was saying. This wasn't just about selling a series anymore. It was about something much bigger. "I get it now," Strahan said, his voice softer but sincere. "It's not about choosing sides. It's about understanding." Costner nodded. "Exactly." The real question now was whether Strahan could keep up with the depth of this conversation. Would the show end with a breakthrough, or would they fall back into safe territory? For the first time in the interview, the studio felt like it was on the edge of something real. Michael Strahan, now fully invested, was no longer just the interviewer. He was a participant in a conversation about something bigger than TV ratings or promotional sound bites. He was grappling with the weight of Costner's words, the depth of the series, and the responsibility of truly understanding it. "You know, Kevin," Strahan began, his voice quieter now, "what you're saying about complexity, it's rare. A lot of the time, we're fed these simple narratives. Good versus evil, heroes versus villains. But you're right, life doesn't work that way. It's messier than that." Costner nodded, his expression serious. "Exactly, and that's what this series is about. It's about showing that people aren't defined by a single moment, a single choice. We all have layers. We're all contradictions. And in the case of these brothers, they represent the best and worst of us. One fights for freedom, but he doesn't understand the cost. The other fights for loyalty, but in doing so, he's blind to the consequences." Strahan, clearly moved by the gravity of Costner's words, asked, "And how do you balance that? How do you make the audience understand both sides without losing them?" "It's not about balance," Costner replied, his voice calm but filled with conviction. "It's about honesty. You can't make one side the hero and the other the villain. You show their motivations, their humanity. You show the moments when they doubt their cause, when they question everything they're fighting for. That's where the real power is." Strahan sat back, absorbing this. It was clear now that Costner wasn't just promoting a show, he was sharing a message. This wasn't about entertainment for the sake of entertainment. It was about challenging the audience to think, to question their own beliefs and perceptions. "Do you think people are ready for that kind of storytelling?" Strahan asked, his tone almost hesitant now, as if he was unsure of the answer himself. Costner didn't hesitate. "I think they need it. More than ever. We live in a time where we're so quick to judge, to categorize people into good or bad. But that's not the truth. The truth is much more complicated. It's the gray areas that matter." Strahan nodded slowly, visibly deep in thought. "You've certainly given me a lot to think about, Kevin. I can't deny that." The conversation had shifted completely. Gone was the initial tension, replaced by a sense of understanding, even respect. Strahan, who had entered the interview hoping for an easy segment, now found himself in the middle of a discussion that transcended anything he had expected. This wasn't just about promoting a series. This was about starting a conversation, about breaking down the barriers between entertainment and reality. As the conversation began to wind down, it was clear that the real story had emerged. Would Strahan and Costner leave with a sense of resolution, or was there still more to uncover? The tension had finally subsided, replaced by an understanding that neither Strahan nor Costner had anticipated when the interview began. What started as a confrontation had transformed into a genuine exchange of ideas, one that would leave viewers reflecting long after the segment ended. Strahan, now more relaxed, leaned in, eager to understand the heart of Costner's message. "You mentioned earlier about these brothers, how they're not just heroes or villains. It's a story about empathy, right? Showing both sides and understanding their motivations. But how do you make that real for the audience? How do you keep them from just picking a side and staying there?" Costner's eyes softened, but his voice remained steady, thoughtful. "That's the challenge, Michael. You have to show their flaws, their struggles. When you're telling a story about people who are forced to make impossible choices, you can't present them as perfect beings. You have to let the audience see their doubts, their fears, and their humanity. Once you do that, they can't just pick a side anymore. They have to start asking themselves, what would I do in their place? Strahan nodded, clearly impressed by the depth of the story. And this isn't just a historical drama, right? You're tying it into the present. It's about divisions that are happening now. Exactly, Costner said, his voice gaining strength. This isn't just about the Civil War. It's about how we, as a society, are still divided today. We're still fighting battles, whether it's over politics, race, or beliefs. We're still seeing families torn apart over things that are beyond their control. That's what makes this story so relevant. The gravity of what Costner was saying wasn't lost on Strahan. For the first time, the interview felt less like a promotional stunt and more like an invitation to think. Strahan, who had been trained to keep things light and easy, now saw the true power of a conversation that challenged both the guest and the audience. And you're asking people to really look at themselves, to reflect on their own biases, their own choices. Strahan asked, almost in disbelief. That's the goal, Costner replied, his tone unwavering. Art isn't supposed to make you comfortable. It's supposed to make you think. If we're not challenging the audience to confront their own beliefs, then what are we doing? The studio was silent. Strahan, who had been the one asking questions, now seemed almost humbled by the honesty in Costner's words. The usual post-interview chatter that would follow this segment was absent. What they had just shared went beyond the confines of a typical morning show segment. Strahan finally leaned back, letting the moment sink in. I didn't expect this conversation, Kevin. I thought we'd just talk about your series and that would be it. Costner smiled slightly, the intensity of the moment still hanging in the air. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones you don't expect. The conversation had come full circle, but the real question remained. Was this the breakthrough they needed, or would the superficiality of entertainment win out? The conversation was no longer about promoting a series or answering surface-level questions. It had evolved into something much more substantial. For the first time in the interview, both Kevin Costner and Michael Strahan were speaking on the same wavelength, not just as celebrity and host, but as two people engaged in a deep dialogue about storytelling, truth, and society. Strahan sat back, his demeanor calmer, more thoughtful than before. You've really opened my eyes to something, Kevin, he said, his tone quieter now. This show, it's not just entertainment. It's a way to start a conversation, isn't it? Costner's expression softened slightly, but his focus never wavered. Exactly. Entertainment is important, but it's also a tool. It's about using that platform to make people think, to show them the complexity of the human experience. If you're just making content to distract people, what are you really offering them? Strahan paused, taking in the weight of Costner's words. For years, he'd been part of a system that thrived on quick sound bites, viral moments, and shallow entertainment. But now, in this moment, he realized that there was something more meaningful at play. He had spent the entire interview trying to avoid discomfort, but Costner had forced him to confront it head-on. You're asking people to really think, Strahan said slowly, to look at themselves and their beliefs, to question the narratives they've been told. That's heavy. Costner nodded. It is, but that's the only way we'll grow. If we keep accepting the easy answers, we're never going to change. We're never going to evolve. The stories we tell, whether in film, TV, or in everyday life, need to reflect that complexity. The audience, still silent, could feel the shift. What had started as a confrontation had become a dialogue, one that was raw and real. Strahan, now fully engaged, wasn't just asking questions to fill time. He was learning. He was listening. I have to say, Strahan admitted, a hint of admiration in his voice, this conversation has made me rethink the way I approach these interviews. I'm used to going for the quick answers, the catchy lines, but maybe that's not the best way to get to the truth. Costner's gaze softened, as if he saw Strahan's realization for what it was. It's not easy, but it's worth it. The truth isn't always easy to hear, and it's not always comfortable, But it's real, and that's the point. For a moment, there was nothing but the weight of their exchange. The energy in the studio was different now, calmer, more reflective. What had begun as an awkward, tense interview had transformed into something far more meaningful. Strahan let out a breath, finally breaking the silence. "I get it, Kevin. You're right. The real conversation isn't about the headlines. It's about having the courage to ask the hard questions and dig deeper." The breakthrough had happened, but the question lingered. Would Strahan take this new perspective with him, or would the pressure of the media world pull him back to his old habits? As the conversation moved forward, it became clear that the dynamic between Strahan and Costner had fundamentally shifted. What had started with friction and tension was now turning into a moment of genuine introspection. Costner's honesty had forced Strahan to step back and reconsider the nature of his work, not just as a host, but as someone who, in his own way, shaped the narratives that people consumed. Strahan, now deeply engaged, leaned forward. "You've got me thinking, Kevin," he said, his voice more contemplative than before. "This series of yours, it's more than just a story about brothers at war. It's a story about the way we treat each other, about the divisions we create, and how we're all complicit in them." Costner's eyes sharpened with interest. "That's exactly it. People don't realize how the things we argue about today, politics, race, ideology, are echoes of the past. We're still fighting the same battles, just in different forms. This show, at its core, is about understanding those divisions. It's not about picking sides, it's about seeing the human cost of those divisions." Strahan took a moment, absorbing the gravity of Costner's words. "So, you're not trying to make a statement about right or wrong. You're just showing the complexity of people's actions, their motivations?" "Exactly," Costner said firmly. "Everyone has a reason for what they do, even if we don't agree with it. The two brothers in this series are both right and wrong. They each believe they're fighting for something greater than themselves, but they're blind to the consequences of their actions. It's the kind of moral ambiguity that's often missing in storytelling today. The truth isn't always black and white." Strahan, now completely immersed in the conversation, nodded. "I see that now. It's easy to make one side the hero and the other the villain. But real life isn't like that. We all have our contradictions." "Exactly," Costner repeated, his voice steady. "We've lost sight of that. We want everything to be simple, to have clear lines. But history doesn't work that way. People aren't perfect. They make mistakes. They're capable of great love and great cruelty sometimes in the same breath." Strahan, clearly moved by the depth of what Costner was sharing, leaned back in his chair. "So, you're telling me that this show isn't just about telling a story, it's about sparking a conversation, about forcing people to look at their own beliefs and question them." "That's exactly it," Costner said with conviction. "It's about challenging the way we view each other and understanding that people are shaped by their circumstances. It's about seeing things from someone else's perspective, even when it's uncomfortable." The room was quiet now, as Strahan processed everything Costner had said. The weight of the conversation wasn't lost on him. This wasn't just about a Hollywood star promoting his new series. This was about something bigger, something that transcended the typical interview. Strahan finally broke the silence, his voice quieter than before. "I have to be honest with you, Kevin. This has been one of the most challenging interviews I've ever had, but I think it's been one of the most important." Costner smiled slightly, his tone warm but still serious. "I'm glad you see that, Michael. Sometimes the best conversations are the ones that make us uncomfortable." The conversation had shifted from promotion to something deeper. Strahan had been forced to confront his own biases. Would the media world allow him to carry this new perspective forward, or would he fall back into old habits? The interview had come full circle, but the tension was still palpable in the air. What had started as a routine promotional segment had evolved into a raw, uncomfortable, and ultimately powerful conversation that neither Michael Strahan nor Kevin Costner had expected. The studio, once full of light chatter and energy, now felt like a place of quiet reflection, with even the crew behind the camera sensing that something extraordinary had transpired. Strahan, now visibly changed by the exchange, sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Kevin," he said, his voice soft but sincere, "I think you've made me realize something. It's not just about giving the audience what they want to hear. It's about having the courage to push them to think, to make them uncomfortable. That's what good art does." Costner gave a small, appreciative nod. "Exactly. It's easy to go for the quick answers, the safe responses. But that's not where the real impact lies. The real impact comes when you challenge people to confront the things they'd rather ignore. When you make them question their own beliefs." Strahan paused, looking at Costner with newfound respect. "And you're right. I didn't come into this interview prepared for a conversation like this. I wasn't ready to go deeper, but I'm glad we did." Costner's expression softened, but there was still a glimmer of intensity in his eyes. "I'm glad, too. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that push us to confront our own blind spots. That's where growth happens." Strahan smiled, this time genuinely, not just for the cameras. "I think this is going to stick with me for a long time, Kevin, and hopefully it sticks with the audience, too." Costner leaned back, his tone lightening just slightly. "Good. If it does, then maybe we've done our job." There was a pause, a moment of silence that spoke volumes. Both men, in that moment, seemed to understand something deeper than what had been said aloud. The world of celebrity interviews, with its quick sound bites and viral moments, had been temporarily set aside in favor of something real, something that had transcended the superficiality that often defined these kinds of segments. Strahan finally broke the silence, his voice more resolute than before. "I'm definitely going to think differently about the questions I ask moving forward. This interview made me realize that I have a responsibility to dig deeper, to ask more of myself and my guests. I owe it to the audience." Costner smiled, his eyes steady. "That's all anyone can ask for, Michael. To ask better questions and to keep pushing for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." The interview wrapped up, but the impact lingered. Strahan's final words to the audience weren't just about promoting Costner's series anymore. They were about the value of hard conversations, the importance of challenging narratives, and the power of art to make us see the world in a new way. As the cameras cut away, the applause that followed wasn't the usual, polite response to a celebrity appearance. This was real. This was earned. The conversation had shifted something in everyone present, leaving behind a moment of clarity, one that would resonate long after the credits rolled. This interview wasn't just about promoting a series. It was a reminder that real conversation, uncomfortable, raw, and honest, is the key to breaking through the noise. Are we ready for that kind of change?